All right, it's 5:30. I'm going to call the annual budget hearing to order. May I have roll call, please?
Wong,
Present.
Miller,
Present.
Levy,
Here.
Larson,
Present.
Jacobs,
Here.
Delgado,
Present.
Anderson.
Here.
All members are present with Anderson, Larson, and Wong in the boardroom. Everyone else is virtual.
May I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Good evening and welcome to the annual budget hearing. Before we begin with the presentation of the budget tonight, I would like to share information regarding a special call-in line that we were able to set up for tonight's meeting for the public hearing portion of the meeting. Following the presentation of the budget will be the opportunity for the public to address the board regarding the proposed budget. If you would like to address the board during this time and did not come to COLAC or send an email regarding the budget, you may call in for your 3 minutes of sharing. The same rules apply like any other comments time. That being said, if you saw the information in the meeting agenda prior to Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., the call-in information has changed. If you want to call in when we get to the public hearing of the proposed 2020-2021 budget, please dial 1-312-626-6799. You will be prompted to enter the meeting ID number followed by the pound sign. The ID number is 869-8226-4979 pound. The number again to dial in is 1-312-626-6799. And the ID number is 869-8226-4979 pound. You will then be asked for a participant ID, or to continue, just press the pound key, and you will just press the pound key. You will then be asked for the password, and the password is 834830. Gosh, this is a process. It will tell you that you have now entered the meeting and you will hear music playing. You will be admitted to the meeting when it is your turn and the host admits you. Please be sure to mute or turn the volume down on the computer or device that you are watching the YouTube stream of the meeting on as soon as you are admitted to speak, in order to avoid feedback so that your comments will be heard clearly from your phone. To unmute your phone, you'll press star and the number 6 key. You will have 3 minutes to speak after you state your name and address for the record. Please be aware that there may be up to a 15-second delay between the call and the YouTube streaming. I'll announce that again after the when we get to that hearing portion for public comment, and then it is also on board docs in the meeting information. All right, so we are at the budget presentation.
President Larson, may I ask a quick question before we get started?
Sure.
Would it be possible when we get to the hearing, I know it's posted in board docs and I think it's really awesome that we did, would it be possible just to screen share that? Just in case somebody missed a number somewhere, maybe just briefly before we get started, so in case somebody missed the call-in information, they could click.
Sure, I'm going to read it again once the presentation's done. So if you wouldn't mind screen sharing that while I read it, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am happy to be here tonight with you to talk about the 2021 annual budget for the School District of Beloit. As we had looked at the preliminary budget earlier in October, of course, we were waiting for the certifications of our third Friday count as well as our aid. So I have updated some of the factors and assumptions that we made in that preliminary budget. One of those was the actual count that we had for enrollment on our third Friday count. The FTE for membership was in at 6412. I had actually projected that to be about 6420. So I was about 8 off, and I was kind of close. So that did unfortunately bring our 3-year average down just a couple numbers, so that the 3-year average we're using for our revenue limit is 6738. And as a reminder, last year was based on 7009. We did have the TID closure in 1920 that had resulted in 1.5 million in revenue dollars that was not reoccurring, and therefore that is missing from the budget for this year when you start looking at the numbers. Our shared costs were down due to COVID, thus affecting our aid. And salary increases were built into this for professional educators at the $12.50, and that's based on the compensation model approved in 1920 for professional educators. And all other categories were represented with a CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, increase of 1.81%. We also recognized an increase in our premiums of 6% for health insurance. Those are unchanged from the original preliminary budget presentation. With the certification, our revenue limit has changed a little. You will find a copy of the revenue limit worksheet. I'm going to switch over real quick. That is this form. It's very hard to read because it's so small. I have copied it in there for people to be looking, and this is where you're going to see that difference in that 3-year average, and what our declining enrollment and the hold harmless that are referenced on my other slide are in this worksheet, which comes to our revenue limit of $73,372,554, which is this number indicated in my presentation.
Ms. Armstrong, I'm sorry to interrupt. How do you want to handle questions? We have some. Do you want me to interrupt as they come up?
Sure.
Okay. Board Member Wong. I'm sorry, I always forget to ask that when we're starting a big presentation until the first one comes up. I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to ask.
That's fine. Mine's a real simple one. For everyone listening, would you mind explaining like acronyms, because somebody might not know what a TID is on the previous slide?
Oh, sure. When I spoke of the TID closure, that is a tax incremental district. So the perfect example is out at Gateway in Beloit. They were given tax incentives to build business and improve the economy. And bringing those businesses to have them build in that area, they're giving tax discounts to those businesses while they're building and trying to get their bones really in the district and in the community. When that expires, the organizations then have to pay those taxes, and the districts and the city, anybody that falls into that taxing authority, which would be your city, fire, and your schools, they start collecting those taxes. So one of those closed last year, and that is what represented the 1.5 million. We do not have any TIDs scheduled for closure in the near future that we would be able to project that out. We do probably have, I think, 3 that would be expiring maybe in 5 years, but if we look at trends, they have paid off early. So, I attend all the meetings with the Joint Council of City to make sure that I stay abreast of when to kind of expect those closures, but it is not something that I knew was coming last year. It was kind of a surprise when I took over this position. So I'm hoping we'll be able to use those partially in our planning processes.
And that then I guess the closure of that also has a direct impact on the mill rate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I think I pretty much explained this. So when we are talking about the revenue limit, you do have one-time non-recurring exemptions as well as recurring exemptions. When we're talking about non-recurring exemptions, we're talking about declining enrollment and the hold harmless, which I have defined down here at the bottom of the screen. What you are seeing here is that hold harmless and the non-reoccurring exemptions are equaling out almost to a little over $5 million. When they say they're one time, that means we get them this year. We're not guaranteed those in the future. So if our enrollment starts to go up, which is what we would like to see happen, those declining enrollment exemptions go down. Hold harmless makes sure that the district does not receive less than what it received last year, so that you're not going through fluctuations of trying to staff and hire and reorganize your staff. So you're guaranteed to have the same level of what you spent in the prior year. Okay. Reoccurring exemptions are our transfer of service, which is only $48,270, and those are for services that we receive payment for offering to students outside of our district. It is different than open enrollment. This slide, of course, I've updated with the numbers for this year, for 2021, and in some of our strategic planning, we're going to start doing some looking at what is happening in timelines during these periods. As we see our growth and enrollment went up, and then we've seen it be coming down. I think those are trends that we should be looking at and trying to address what was happening in our district at that time, so that we can get back to the periods where our enrollment was increasing. Okay. Our state equalization aid, from my preliminary budget projections, we actually had a decrease of only $135,991. And again, like I specified in the previous presentation, the equalized property value determines who's paying what percentage. I'm sorry?
Oh, I think it was an automated device that said goodbye.
Oh, okay. So as our property values increase, we did see an 8.2% increase for the 2020 calculation. That's actually really good news for us in Beloit, in that our economy and our community is increasing in values. However, that does change who's paying what percentages as that continues to grow. The membership, as I indicated, is an average of the 3 pupil counts that were in September of 18, September of 19, and September of 20, and also includes summer school FTEs. And the prior year spending is a direct impact, which of course was reduced because of COVID expenditures. This is the calculation of our revenue limit authority, which I showed on that previous worksheet. And then what our equalization aid and high poverty aids are for the district, and that equals what we are actually allowed to levy for. So after our general state aid and equalization, we will be levying for $5.22 million in the general fund. Okay. This slide quickly goes over the tax impact, and I do apologize, there is a typo on this one. On the 1920, it should be $1.43, not $143, as far as the difference in our tax rate between 1819 and 1920. But as you will see, the mill rate is still expected to go down 20 cents. So we are levying a higher dollar amount, but still being able to reduce those costs as far as the mill rate is going. We note on here the revenue limit energy exemptions that were in prior years, because that is a direct reflection of part of the all funds levy, just for explanation purposes. Okay, these slides for revenues, they were adjusted to change the general aid amount and where the funds are coming from. And so we did see our general aid certified at 67.954%, or I'm sorry, $1 million. And that was down from the projections, up from our projections of 67,505 that I had originally projected. So that did increase our total revenue up to 105 million for our operating, which is Fund 10 and Fund 27. It's a graphic that kind of shows and demonstrates that the majority of our funding is coming from federal or state sources, with the next highest in federal funding. Only 5% of our revenue for operating is coming from local property taxes. Okay. This is a similar breakout for our special education. That transfer is 68% of the special ed revenue, and that transfer is our Fund 10 to Fund 27 transfer. So from our general operating to our special ed to cover those services. The rest of the funding for special ed is coming from state and federal sources. Okay, our expenses have stayed exactly as I projected them. I did not add any new components to this conversation based on presenting the same data that was presented in the preliminary budget. So we are looking at general expenses of totaling $108 million. Okay. This graphic will show you where we are spending the majority of our money. If we are spending 64% on salary and benefits, that is aligned with a healthy balance of where we spend our money in a district with other school organizations as well as corporate. As long as you're keeping that percentage, usually under 75%, once you get to 75%, you're getting a little concerning on spending too much money on your salary and benefits, and you need to invest in your organization. So we are in a really a very good position on where we're spending our money. This 10% of transfer, that is that special ed transfer. So you are seeing 10% of our operating budget from Fund 10, and Fund 27 is made up of that transfer. I've included an analysis of our fund balance. So when I projected our fund balance for 2021 in the preliminary budget, I actually had shown a deficit projected of 3.258 million. So with the aid certification, we were able to bring that up a little bit to the 2.953 shortage that we would have. As you can tell, in 1920, we did add 2.168 million to our fund balance due to COVID and not spending the funds that we had in our budget. If we operated with this budget at the 2.93, we would still maintain a fund balance of 17.75%. Under the preliminary projections that I had done previously, it was projected at a 17.42%. So very adequate and being responsive to what is a healthy fund balance for the school district. I saw there was a question.
Well, thank you. Just a quick question with fund balance. Since districts receive state funding based on estimates, I'm wondering, what has our trend been? Has it been that we were overpaid or underpaid? And if we were overpaid due to an estimate, have we been able to comfortably pay back those funds without a huge disruption in our fund balance?
As far as having to return funds, those would just be in our grants. If that's anything that we don't spend in our budget that isn't grant funded, we're not sending that back. What would change is they would do an adjustment to our aid on our final payment of aid that comes in July if our numbers were not aligned with our student counts and what we had in shared cost and open enrollment. So you get that adjustment of aid in July for your final payment.
Right, and I should have been more specific. I'm not speaking about grants, but our funding sources from the state government, that's based on estimates, right?
We do put them in through estimates. The October 15th is our certification, which is why we have to wait, because that is when they certify our membership as far as those counts. So when we do the January estimates, when we do the second Friday count in January, those numbers come into play when they do the aid adjustment at the end of the year.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, the money is not dispersed until those estimates are firm. So we're not receiving money based on the estimate.
Right, you get multiple payments per year. So in some of them, you get a 1/6 payment every 2 months, and then in other situations, you're getting 3 payments of 33%, and in some, you're getting a 20%, and at the end, you get that, they have that bigger payment so that they can take those adjustments. So depending on the type of aid we're talking, those adjustments are all done at the end of the year.
Perfect. Has our trend been that it has been underestimated and we get more money, or has our trend been that it was overestimate and we need to pay money back? And if it is the latter, I'm just wondering, like, do we plan for that the estimate was a little bit off, and so we're able to take care of that immediately without causing a huge disruption to our fund balance?
Okay, excellent question. Now I understand where you were going. I apologize. Our usual trend in the adjustments, the biggest unknown is our open enrollment out. And so that's where we see that transition of how many students we had come in versus coming out. And unfortunately, those don't have to be reported by the school taking them. I shouldn't say taking them, but having our students come in, they're not certifying that till the summer. So when they get that number, we kind of are estimating. We're running reports on our end of who we know is open enrolled. Sometimes we don't have all of those letters of open enrollment. So yes, there is some adjustments in the letter. We usually are not underestimating. We do have that aid reduction or adjustment, and I don't like calling it a reduction because our numbers are reported correctly. We just end up with a bigger payment for open enrollment than what we specifically thought we would have. And so when I'm looking at the budgets, I pad it with usually a 1 or a 2% increase in our open enrollment because we're seeing that trend of declining enrollment. But I also don't try to put the doomsday look out there and say that we're going to have 300 kids out of our district. So that payment is actually made in July, but it is credited to June for the end of the fiscal year. So it does not have a significant impact on our fund balance as far as being able to meet our payrolls until the next year's aids start coming in.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm happy to hear that you do pad for those like realistic estimates. Thank you.
Yep. I will say that I tend to be a very conservative budgeter and trying to not overproject. I like exciting changes, not terrifying changes. So thank you for those questions. The next slide is kind of an analysis of our mill rate and what we have seen happen with our mill rate over the years. And what we want to avoid in mill rates, as I talked about previously, is we hate to see those ups and downs, because those ups and downs are what are affecting our families in not being able to plan. So the perfect example is not knowing what your taxes are going to be. In 15-16, they had 2 years of a consistent tax levy, and then it dropped down to $9.73. And honestly, people get excited. They have more money. Their taxes are not as high. And then you'll notice in 17-18, it went right back up to where it was. And that can be very impactful on some of our community members in not knowing that is going to come up the next year. So we are trying to stay with a consistent mill rate so people know what to expect. And I'm happy to say that we have still been able to reduce that mill rate slightly every year to help benefit our families. Okay. The budget publication was actually published in the Beloit Daily News on October 9th in accordance with state statutes, and copies are available on the district website. Once the budget is adopted tonight and a levy is set, we will have the updated publications on the website and available at the front desk, and they will also be published again in the Beloit Daily News. Are there any questions? Awesome. I feel like I answered everybody's questions.
Board Member Levy?
Could you just, for the benefit of the public, Mrs. Armstrong, briefly explain, I'm not sure if everyone knows what a mill rate is and how once the budget is passed, then revenues are subtracted and then the deficit is raised through property taxes, just so you, and thank you for explaining how it can fluctuate, and then people are like, oh, I have more money, oh, it went back, but how passing the budget impacts the mill rate.
Okay. Passing the budget, the mill rate is really driven by that revenue limit worksheet that I had provided. I'm going to flip back to that real quick. So as I said, most people aren't necessarily the numbers geeks that I am, and I love going through here and looking at all the formulas, and this is available. You'll notice that all the yellow cells, if you look at the bottom here, it tells you that's DPI data. So all of that information is not editable by the district. So once that aid certification comes in, the state is telling us these are your numbers. And then the green is auto calculation. So these are formulas that are driving. This left-hand side over here with our membership numbers, all these formulas and numbers are populating this side. So once we, as I indicated, once we take out the aid calculation, we see what our levy amount is. So our general operating levy is $5.2 million, and that is going to cover the general operating fund and our non-referendum debt. So those are things that are subject to that revenue limit, the $73 million. We have the referendum debt, which we have $12.3 million in here. And I apologize, I didn't address this. I want to make sure that that's clear. That is our referendum debt. And much like we did last year, we have budgeted extra $8 million to prepay that debt, which will save the district another $1.5 million. So over the past 2 years, by being able to prepay this debt and keep that mill rate consistent and even going down, we have a $3 million savings in interest costs on that debt payment. So our total levy amount is going to be $17 million, and that is for all debt and operating costs. The mill rate, as I put down here at the very bottom, you see the levy rate is 0.0100956. That equates to a mill rate of 1010, and we always use $100,000 house value or property value. simply because the math is simple. When I try to use other numbers, it tends to be a little confusing. This means the mill rate is what you pay per 100,000 or per 1,000 on a property. So if your house was valued at 80,000 or your property was 80,000, you would take 80 times this 1010. When I say we use $100,000 for simply, that means you're paying $1,010 a year in taxes. So that is, the mill rate is defining what you're paying in your taxes per 1,000.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Board Member Jacobs?
Hi. Joanne, I don't know if this is my first budget approval, so I'm not sure if I'm doing the budget etiquette correctly. But are we going to discuss it all? I saw in the earlier slides that I know the professional educators have gotten an increase, correct?
Yes.
And what other groups? Can you just talk a little bit about that, about where we're at with our different groups and where they're at with their pay?
Sure.
Is that appropriate this time?
Yes. So the assumptions for the budget as it stands now are including the compensation model approved increases for professional educators, which would be our teachers and our student services and the staff that hold state licensure by the Department of Public Instruction, and they receive a $12.50 increase. So every professional educator on the salary model that is a full-time FTE receive that $12.50 approved increase. All other categories, which would include, our paras, our secretaries, support staff, our crossing guards, security officers, all of them are budgeted in here with the Consumer Price Index increase of 1.81%. What is the interesting component when we start looking at this, last year at the budget hearing, there was a lot of conversation about groups and how we are addressing groups. And at that point, the board had approved an increase for our paraeducators, raising that basic entry-level rate of pay to $15 an hour. We have addressed various groups for pay and adjusting starting pay throughout the last 3 years, including our subs, in our subs teachers, secretaries. We just in the spring approved increases for those positions. The starting rate, like I said, for paras is $15. Our secretaries, our secretaries and support staff have not been addressed as a group in over 9 years, as far as looking at their base pay. And their starting wage is secretary level 3, which is our elementary secretaries, high school academic affairs, the receptionists. They start at $15.19 an hour, which is 19 cents more than our paras at this point. And as I said, those haven't been addressed in over 9 years. So there has been some conversation. I was asked to provide some numbers of what it would look like to increase and address the secretarial and support staff that have not been looked at. And so I had provided some items for reference when it was asked for what it would look like to provide increases of $1, $1.50, or $2 for those support groups. And that any of those increases would be in addition to what our budget is already been presented. So it is my understanding that we would be looking at adopting our budget, and then we can have conversations about any additions or changes that would be in addition to our budget.
So I just to clarify, so if we approve the agenda tonight without discussing that group of people, we could still give them an increase later? Why wouldn't we do, and if that's so, why wouldn't we do it now?
We want to
Did
have.
that make sense?
We want to have two separate discussions, Board Member Jacobs, because there's a potential conflict of interest. So we want to handle the budget as one issue, and then this is a separate issue. To give a board member an opportunity to participate in the budget approval, but then step out for this discussion.
Who has to, I'm sorry, who has to step out?
So they would both
confused.
happen tonight. We'll get there when we get there, but they could still happen tonight. But want to keep like two separate issues.
Oh,
So-
okay,
so-
so just
so-
hold my thought?
So put a pin on that. No, put a pin in that, and then we'll come back to it.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then Vice President Miller. I apologize.
Yeah, I wasn't
Board
sure.
member, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Board Member Wong was that
No,
of
Go
you.
ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay. One thing for clarification for the public is the mill rate that you had discussed before, that is just the portion for the school district of Beloit. So the public needs to understand that that's not their total tax bill. That's not just because you also have the municipality issue, part of it, Black Hawk Tech, and those are the two main ones that go beyond that. So just for the public's information, this is just the school district's portion of your property taxes.
Thank you. I apologize for not clarifying that. That's a big point.
But yeah, exactly. But also, I'd like to, Ms. Armstrong, thank you for your explanation of the presentation. And I know this is my third budget, I think. So it does get easier to understand over time. And I know that I appreciate the time that you've taken to explain it to me. And I know you've done this with other board members as well, because it is a very daunting task. And it's something that as time goes on, you do get better at it. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
And now Vice President Miller.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to clarify because I was going to ask Ms. Armstrong to explain what she explained. We had a conversation about longevity pay, and I wasn't sure that this was the right time. Should we put a pin in that for the later portion of the meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, please.
Sounds great. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Thank you.
And then Board Member Levy.
Mrs. Armstrong, feel free to delay this question if you already plan to answer it later. But I really believe that a district announces its priorities by how we utilize our assets. And on average, districts usually spend about 80% on their budgets on salaries and fringe benefits. And as Board Member Miller pointed out yesterday in her legislative update, that it's not just us, but across the state of Wisconsin, we're seeing decreasing enrollment, I believe, by about 3%. So with that in mind, I'm just wondering, just broad strokes, are we in that 80% range? Are we on the higher end, the lower end? And are we seeing trend year over year, our spending going up or down with student enrollment?
Okay, that is an excellent question. And I was going to, when we start looking at our expenses, as I indicated on this chart, we're spending about 64% of our budget on salary and benefits. That is pretty consistent with what we have been doing in the past. We did see an increase this year. That professional educator comp model is definitely more expensive to the district than what we have been doing in the past. But that is trying to address that equity within our professional educators, making us competitive and being able to recruit and retain staff by offering competitive salaries with our partners, which is what drove the decision for the comp model. the percentage of our budget has not changed as far as what we're spending in salary and benefits significantly. And I would say a significant change would be 3 or more %. When you start looking at the recommended budget adoptions, you can, I know it's 5 pages long, it can be a little daunting. You can start seeing that in 18-19, just in instructional salary costs, I shouldn't say salary costs, is anything that is instructional in nature, so because it's not broken down by the spending object, but we're spending $39.4 million. In 1920, we spent $36.05 million in instructional costs, and we have budgeted 38.23. I have cautioned when I gave the preliminary budget to not necessarily just reflect on what happened in 1920, because these are not the budget numbers, you're seeing the actual numbers. So those numbers are lower because we did not have those expenses from March until the end of the year.
And then one quick follow-up. Am I missing anything? Because when I think of like compensation of your staff, I automatically go to salaries and benefits. Are there other, because that 65 seems kind of low. I mean, it's great, but it seems low to me. Are there other perks that I'm not thinking of, like tuition reimbursement or I don't know, things that I'm not thinking of that would be included in that category, but maybe itemized differently to get us to that 65% for benefits?
I think a big portion of that is that unfortunately, and it's very prevalent on the special education side, is we have had difficulty staffing some of those harder to fill positions, such as some psychologists and OTs, speech pathologists. And so those actually are falling more in this purchase services because we're having to use a contract service to have, someone from Soliant or from Blazeworks to come in and fill those. So there are what I would consider some salary and benefit costs reflected in that personnel services or purchase services category.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, Board Member Jacobs?
And maybe I'm supposed to wait with this question too, so forgive me. But in the past, haven't we had, I wanted to, something's niggling in my brain that we used to have some sort of credit reimbursement for paras who wanted to be teachers, especially people of color. Am I imagining that, or is that a question for later?
I'm sorry, did you say for like paras that want to become teachers?
Yeah,
Okay.
Didn't we have one, and I'm not talking about the Grow Your Own. I thought that we had, or maybe it was the Grow Your Own, but I thought
Yes.
that,
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. We do have some partnerships that we continue to work towards, and we actually have some meetings set up. Ms. Beavers works as well with a magnitude of different organizations. UW SET is one we're working with right now, trying to get some ESL paras and bilingual candidates to come in and get their teacher certification in dual language or in ESL. That's the one project I know that we have really kind of gotten into this year and trying to get some of those. I believe they also work with some of our early childhood or special education paras that want to get certification in that. So we do have some credit reimbursement type programs or potential of coming back into the district incentives that we do for some of our harder to fill positions. The Grow Your Own Scholarship is for our students from Beloit Memorial. It's a multicultural scholarship that is an option for our students, but not for our staff. We have looked and are continuing to look at a similar Grow Your Own type program that would be available for paras or individuals that are not our students, but are interested in becoming professional educators within our district.
Okay, that's awesome, because I do know at least one example of a person of color who is struggling to meet the financial requirements to come back to our district. So I'm glad that we're looking into that, and because I just want us to, give people that have been in the district and that are loyal and for one reason or another, have left and want to come back, an opportunity to help them financially. And then I'm just curious, where does that all go in the pot then? Does that fall under salaries, or is that something different then?
It's really dependent on the program. So some of them may fall into a tuition reimbursement, which would be into our benefit costs. But if we are working with a cooperative with that organization and paying that organization, it falls into those purchase services because we are paying that entity for those services that they are providing. I will say that a lot of attention has been brought to this in the recent months because that was identified in one of those short-term board goals that the board had set, that they wanted us to focus on retention and recruitment of all staff, including an emphasis on candidates of color. So that is something that we are in the process of looking at, really developing those programs. So I don't have a lot of in-depth details, as it's been very new, as those goals were just set for us.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you.
Vice President Miller?
Yes, thank you. I was hoping that for the benefit of the audience, I'm sorry, I got a little sidetracked because that's a very interesting conversation. I'm trying to remember my question. I was going to ask if you could explain what accommodations, if any, we've had or tweaks we've had to make for this budget because of COVID. I just thought people might be interested.
As far as adjustments to our budgets, I guess the biggest adjustment, and I will say this from my personal standpoint in trying to communicate with the board and the community, is the thought process of a deficit budget. The financial side of me and being the fiscally responsible agent, it really bothers me to present a deficit budget. I want to find ways that we will accommodate that. However, we are in a pandemic, and we need to have personal protective equipment. We need to take safety protocols. We need to be looking at these things and taking into consideration that we did not spend that money last year, and knowing it's in fund balance. And that's a struggle, I will say. I don't know if community and board members are having that same struggle, but for me as a financial professional, it's hard for me to say, yep, let's spend our savings. But when I look at what we added to fund balance and that TID amount that we had of $1.5 million that we didn't expect, that money really helped balance our budget last year. Had we had full expenses for the year, I think we would have been a lot closer to where we were supposed to be and what we expected, and spent, we might be looking at a different ending situation. So that's been the biggest adjustment, and I don't know if that really addresses it, but we are spending in different areas and understanding that the money that wasn't spent last year truly is going to be spent to make the accommodations and the needs that we have for this year.
No, that's a great explanation, and I really do appreciate that, because I know there are a lot of folks who are most likely uncomfortable with the deficit budget. It's something that I struggle with a little bit, but of course I understand like the circumstances. And then based on those circumstances, I just had a quick follow-up question based on something you said. Some of the tweaks that we're making with COVID and, considering like how we'll reopen, if you could point out maybe in the pie chart you've got up here, like where there might be room to make accommodations, like for smaller class sizes or things that would be relevant to the fact that like we'll likely have to open in a transitional circumstance when COVID is still like a thing, but it's not going to stop us from, like when we get to that point. I just think things like smaller class sizes, sanitation, PPE, where is that kind of reflected in your presentation here, just so kind of folks know?
The primary sources of those types of expenses where you're going to see this change as we continue to go is you are going to see changes in this capital, non-capital, and purchase services. Because our purchase services, just for a quick example, is paying our Airmark facilities contract, it's paying TC Networks contract, it pays for our technology in that capital and non-capital expenses. And that is where we are buying supplies and that PPE equipment. So those are where you will see those reflected. As we start going into monthly financials and seeing those, we'll be able to really tie those out and have Ms. LaPointe be able to explain those differences versus what we've seen in prior years.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
Board Member Levy.
Thank you. All right, Mrs. Armstrong, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I do like to be practical. How long can we support consecutive deficit budgets while still maintaining a fund balance? So I don't want to put a descriptor on the fund balance, but maintaining a fund balance. Like what worst case scenario, how long can we sustain this?
Well, I will say as soon as the budget is adopted tonight and we set our levy, my goal and my objective shifts completely. And I want to be very transparent in that side that after tonight, I will transition this budget over to Ms. LaPointe as the Director of Finance, and she will manage this budget. And I will be downloading this information as adopted budget and the prior years into the Baird forecasting model. And as I have said kind of sarcastically, I'm done talking about 2021. I'm talking about 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24 right off the bat, because we are not going to be able to sustain this for 5 years or on. We can sustain this probably and stay within our 14% desired fund balance for probably a maximum of 2 years. And so we have got to do the strategic planning. I want to start you heard me talk about this before, and I know Board Member Wong has heard that. I wanted to have a budget committee work group that involved staff and community to understand this process. Unfortunately, as soon as that started, COVID hit. And I'm going to tell you, everybody started swimming for their life at that point. And the ability to bring people together and to concentrate on that, I did not have that capacity. So I apologize to everyone I had talked to about joining that group. There will be one starting up, and it will probably start up I'm hoping as soon as possible, but no later than January. We'll start getting those members together to set those priorities and look, unfortunately, at what our future is holding if we don't change the trends in Beloit.
Thank you for your transparency. I appreciate that. So just to make sure I heard you correctly, we want to stay at about 14% for our fund balance. And we can currently sustain a deficit budget for about 2 years, and just estimates, I'm not holding you to anything.
Absolutely, as long as you're not holding me for that. It is really contingent on what happens with the elections. The biennium budget for the state is up next year. This is the final year of our biennium budget. So what the state legislator decides to do with funding and what our economic situation in the state and in the nation looks like can change that drastically. But our policy does state we would like to maintain the average between 14 and 20%. I actually think it says 18, I apologize. But I will tell you that that's coming to policy committee because I want to make sure everybody understands that fund balance policy at our next month's meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions?
Any other questions, board members? This is kind of our opportunity to get our questions answered before we turn it over to community members. All right, seeing none. Of course, technology being what it is, our phone line, that wonderful goodbye you heard was our phone line hanging up on us. So they're going to be working on reconnecting that right now. So is it okay if I start reading this while they get hooked back up? No. Okay, so I'm going to read. Vice President Miller, are you able to screen share that all of these numbers?
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
was just going to ask, are you cool if I pull that up right now? Yeah, give me like 1 sec.
Yep. Thank you. Okay.
So I'm sorry, President Larson, where do so it's in board doc? I thought I saw this earlier.
Yeah, yes, it's on board docs. Let's see.
So if I click on, you want me to click on the meeting for tonight, that should have the information?
Yes, and the board secretary said it's in the board report.
One more time?
It's in the board report under 3A.
Oh, 3A. Okay, cool.
Okay. Good evening if you're just tuning in, and welcome to the annual budget hearing. We just heard the presentation of the budget tonight, and I'm going to share the information regarding a special call-in that we were able to set up for tonight's meeting for the public hearing portion of this meeting. The budget is an opportunity for the budget hearing is an opportunity for the public to address the board regarding the proposed budget. If you would like to address the board during this time and did not come to COLAC or send an email regarding the budget, you may call in for your 3 minutes of sharing. The same rules apply like any other public comment time. That being said, if you saw the information in the meeting agenda prior to Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., the call-in information has changed. If you want to call in during this time for the public hearing portion of the proposed 2021 budget, please dial 1-312-626-6799. You will then be prompted to enter the meeting ID number followed by the pound sign. The ID number is 869-8226-4979 pound. You will then be asked for a participant ID number or to continue just pressing the pound key. You will just press the pound key. There is no participant ID number. You will then be asked for the password, and the password is 834830. It will tell you that you have now entered the meeting and you will hear music playing. You will be admitted to the meeting when it is your turn and the host admits you. Please be sure to mute or turn the volume down on the computer or device that you are watching the YouTube stream of the meeting on as soon as you are admitted to speak in order to avoid feedback so that your comments will be heard clearly from your phone. To unmute your phone, you will press star and the number 6 key. You'll have 3 minutes to speak after you state your name and address for the record. And please be aware that there may be up to a 15-second delay between the call and the YouTube streaming. So we need to just hang on for a couple of minutes to make sure that that line is reestablished.
Stand by.
Thank you.
Okay, the phone line has been reestablished. We currently don't have anyone in the waiting room trying to access, so we'll wait a few minutes and see if anyone dials in. And we currently don't have any emails to the board secretary, and it's only us here in the boardroom. We're testing the line to make sure it is in fact working. I can't believe no one is calling us on this wonderful Wednesday evening.
Mr. President,
Yes?
a suggestion, just in case something is wrong or there's misinformation regarding the phone, could we make an announcement that we accept emails at this time?
Sure. You are more than welcome to email the Board of Education at sdb.k12.wi.us. I can put it in the chat box.
Thank you.
We verified the phone line is working. And also, can you believe it? Only 7 people are watching the budget hearing. So board members, this is a unique situation. What's your comfort level like for a wait time? Waiting for public input. I mean, do you want to give like another 5 minutes? What are your thoughts?
Mr. President, I'd say at least 10.
I would say 10, and I hate to put anyone on the spot, but could someone do like a post on the mobile app or just get a quick announcement out with the updated information since it did change at the last minute?
Hi, Amy. This is Monica. By the time that got posted, the 10 minutes would be gone. It's a process to upload that. Not that I can't, but yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for the clarification.
Okay, we waited almost 15 minutes. There are no emails. I mean, don't take it personally, board members. We've had, I think one year we had nobody comment either. You know, we're just, maybe there's good TV on tonight or something. So we're going to go ahead and move on to item 4, the establish the levy and adopt the budget. Board Member Wong.
Board President Larson, we discussed before the discussion of pay increases for secretarial and support staff. So can we address that first before moving, because I believe it's all encompassing with the adoption of the budget.
Sure.
President Larson, I would like to recuse myself from this discussion.
Thank you. Vice President Miller.
Would this be a good opportunity to talk about how this budget allows yourself to sub for longevity pay for all staff?
Yep. Let's let Board Member Spencer step out for a second, and then we'll let Board Member Wong continue his train of thought. And then I have your name down next.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarification. I was a little confused earlier, so
Okay.
Thanks. That helps.
All right. Board Member Wong.
So it's my understanding that Ms. Armstrong has information to discuss with us regarding increased pay for support staff and secretarial staff at this time, and that'll be included, would be included for this year's budget. So there's, you want to take it away?
Sure, thank you. As I had briefly hit on before we finished the presentation of the budget as was presented in the preliminary side with the update to the aid, one of the priorities that we had in discussions for multiple years now is trying to address the secretarial and support employee groups within the district, which unfortunately this group of individuals is a smaller group, but they have been, I don't want to say neglected, but I think that is truly the word that should be used as far as review and looking at their compensation and keeping up with the competitive market out there. Our secretarial and support employee groups is a group of individuals that have put themselves aside and have supported this district in every effort, now more than ever, with distance learning and being able to help with that engagement process of getting families and students to engage with our schools, with our teachers, and just checking on the very well-being of our students. These employees, as I indicated, have not been looked at as a whole in over 9 years. And when put into retrospect with other employee groups, the cost of an increase for them, including all of the benefits that would go along with that, would range between $157,000 and $314,000. The $314,000 is giving a $2 per hour increase to those individuals. And the reason, as I kind of indicated before, I am not an advocate at all for trying to perpetuate a deficit budget or take advantage of a time where we are facing periods of declining enrollment and financial difficulties in using fund balance. However, these employees really are a backbone for this district, and I would like to ask the board to consider looking at that possible $2 per hour increase for those individuals. I would like to add that if we did consider that $2 an hour increase, that would take the deficit back to where I had originally projected it in using fund balance for 3.268. So it's actually a $10,000 difference than what my preliminary budget had projected. That does not increase the mill rate. It does not have that impact on our community. As we continue to look at retention and recruitment, paying attention to all of our employee groups, I think, is a critical component of that. I'm a little passionate about this group because they have continued to work through the craziness that we have had, and they've continued to do this for 9 years. So I would ask that if the board would be open to consideration, that would be the administrative recommendation to look at that at this period.
Are there any other questions regarding this? Yep. Okay. Then Vice President Miller.
No, I'm not in line. That was I had asked mine already. So whoever's next.
Okay. Board Member Jacobs.
Did you say me?
I sure did.
Yay. Okay, so I was very saddened to hear that it's been 9 years. I had no idea. I am completely for the $2, and I will tell you why. I know how hard these individuals work. I have seen it, and frankly, it breaks my heart what they're being paid. As far, I can certainly speak to elementary secretaries, and they can literally either make or break a building. And
Board Member Jacobs, are you there?
they're critical, and it's not just the elementary secretaries. It's, yes, can't you hear me?
No, we lost you for a bit.
What happened?
We lost you right after elementary secretaries make or break the building.
Oh, I was on a roll. But they truly do. And it's not just the elementary secretaries, it's any secretary. They are the first face that the public sees. The amount of work, the different things they do, the multitasking they have to do is incredible. I've always felt that they are very underpaid. And it's not just the secretaries I'm talking about. Can you still hear me? Okay. There are phenomenal people at CAC who are so good at what they do and so intelligent. I cannot say enough how much I am in favor of the $2 increase. Thank you for listening.
All right. Board Member Levy.
Thank you. A couple questions. So my initial concern is that I'm concerned that we're considering increases while simultaneously voting to approve a deficit budget. And I know you touched on it, Ms. Armstrong, but could you clarify, are there spaces in the budget that can be reduced to offset this very important expenditure? And if I heard you correctly, the estimate for what this would cost on the high end is $300,000. That's for this upcoming year. Does that cost fluctuate in subsequent years? And I don't know. So I've stated my concern, and that is heightened by your previous comment, that if things don't change, we can sustain concurrent deficit budgets for about 2 years. Help provide information because I want this to happen, but we also need to be responsible, knowing that we can go as we currently are. This is sustainable for 2 years.
Thank you, Board Member Levy, and I truly appreciate your concern and asking these types of questions. As I indicated, this is a struggle for me to come and ask for this in the situation we are. Of course, the increased wage would be sustained in the next years, and we would probably, it's getting that base rate up to a competitive market for our employees so that we can help retain them. However, my expectation at that point is it would revert to not the prior salary, but back to a CPI increase, which is what we have attained for multiple years. So it would not have another $2 next year and another $2 after that. We would go back to what we typically are budgeting for. As far as somewhere that I think we may have some savings in this budget year, the first thing, and this is a thought that I have had, is we are really not utilizing substitutes in our distance learning environment. We have a few, but we are able to plan through distance learning to have staff cover their own absences by doing virtual or pre-recording their options. So not only are we allowed some of that flexibility with those funds were budgeted. When I did the budget, I presented the budget and budgeted as if our year would continue, because when we do, not knowing if we're going to be in person or virtual, we do have a sub shortage, and that is something that we will continue to struggle with as we come back in, because there isn't a big pool of employees that want to come in and work in this environment. So distance learning has provided us some opportunity for savings and being able to address our student concerns. So long answer to your question is, I think that we can recognize some of the savings with our sub costs at this point. And in comparison to our budget, it is a big item for this year, but I do feel it would be sustainable. As I talked in prior, when we start looking at that forecasting for those future years, we do need to look at our efficiencies and what we are doing with declining enrollment and looking at how we're staffing. I will add that the thought here is if we look in hindsight, we have added assistant principals and deans and other positions to our buildings and additional support services, and we have not added any secretarial support for those individuals. So your secretaries and that support staff has stayed consistent, and I would not anticipate that we would be reducing any of those numbers, as like our elementary schools have one secretary. We would not be losing any of those resources.
And then just one quick follow-up. Does the information you just presented include all other categories outside of professional educators, or is this just another population being added to the professional educator category?
They are a separate group. It is not all others. So administrators are not included in this. They are part of that original budget that is the 1.81%. So that CPI is for everyone. That's what we projected out. What I am offering instead is that CPI that's built in here, that for these individuals, we would be giving that $2 increase. And so realistically, the cost is going to be that's what the $2 costs, but we would be reducing what I had estimated as CPI, because I'm not going to be giving $2 plus CPI. I'm going to be giving that $2 increase. So you'd see a little bit decrease in what I had projected already in salary and benefits for those individuals, but I want to be sure this is a very small group of people. So, it has an impact, but I think that impact is going to keep your employees and really drive towards some of that retention and morale problems.
Perfect. So just so I'm clear on what you're saying, this is our most neglected employee group, but deciding yay or nay on this, we still have other groups that need to be addressed as far as pay equity.
Yes, and that is, I want to be very clear, that this is not a fix-all for us doing equity planning, having longevity conversations, when we're looking at retention and pay equity and comparability, I want to have those conversations as a whole. Unfortunately, I think those conversations have been taking place in pockets, and we've been addressing, let's talk about longevity for teachers. If you're going to have longevity for teachers, why would that necessarily look different for all staff? Because you have other categories of employees that have longevity in the district. We want to make sure that that secretary who's been here 20 plus years is being considered for longevity the same as a teacher would be. So I would like to, I know Board Member Miller had asked about longevity, and I had provided some, what I call the bones of a plan that address the teacher longevity, but I really feel to do that kind of work and look at that retention, that really falls into that short-term goals that we have identified, and I want to do it right, and I want to develop it for everyone. So I know this is a hot topic. I know this is something that the board has been asking to address longevity, and I provided those numbers for that basis so that everyone knows we are looking at it. I'm providing some bones of what it starts to look like, but I feel at this point with our deficit position, I want to address those that are critically neglected for years. And we've addressed teacher pay last year with this comp model, and I know it's not perfect, and there's a lot of issues to work through that. And I would like the opportunity to look at our compensation for equity and our retention process and not put another Band-Aid on it that we're going to have to be looking at it again. Reviewing these things every year, we should be able to take a look at it, but not have to make drastic changes. We need to keep up with the economy. We need to be able to provide livable wages for our employees. And that is going to take a process, much like that budget committee work group that I'm talking about, where we can get feedback from everybody and identify what these district priorities are so that we can focus and make informed strategic decisions.
Thank you for those clarifications. I appreciate it.
All right, Board Member Delgado.
First of all, just want to say thank you so much, Ms. Armstrong, for advocating for that group of staff. I think it's very important that you mentioned and you pointed out that every employee, every staff member is important to the district. And it's unfortunate to hear that this group of staff members have been neglected for so long. I do have just a clarification question. Maybe you mentioned it before and I didn't catch it, but so this would be an increase of wage for starting positions, but also will increase the current staff that are already in those positions. Is that correct?
That is correct. It would raise that starting wage, but everyone that is currently in those positions would be granted that $2 increase. So where their wage is, we would be giving a $2 increase to them at that point so that they have been recognized. We have got them into a comparable market, and they can then become part of that full experience of what we want to look at as pay equity and acknowledgement of how we are, I don't want to say treating our staff, but how we compensate our staffs and looking at total compensation package. And, I'm sorry, I know a couple of you have heard me say this a lot. My ultimate goal is to get employees full compensation report. So they know not only their wage is what is part of their compensation package, but the benefits we provide. The life insurance, the health insurance, the tuition, the memberships, anything that is offered as an incentive to our staff, I want them to see that value, because when we invest that money in our employees, they may not see it in their paycheck, but we truly do have a rich program of benefits for our employees. And I want to make sure that when we're recruiting and we are trying to show what Beloit has to offer, we highlight our community involvement, we highlight the diversity of our staff and our students, and we show them that we may not be able to put every dollar in your paycheck, but we are investing in you with professional development and care in pay equity and recognition.
Thank you. I do have another question. So if this was approved, how would that impact tax levy or our taxpayers? How is that going to impact them if this was approved?
This would not have an impact on the tax levy. It would have an impact on what we are spending out of our fund balance, which would put us back at the it actually comes to 3.268 million, which is 10,000 more than what I expected when I did the preliminary budget that was at 3.258. But the tax levy, as far as what goes out in property tax and to our community, there is no change. It would stay at the $10.10 mill rate that we have established.
Thank you.
Board Member Levy, you were on there again. Do you have anything else? Okay.
Nope, I'm good.
Thank you. Board Member Miller.
Hi, I want to thank Ms. Armstrong for putting this together, and I really appreciate how seriously you're taking this issue, because you're right, it's a hot topic, because it's essential, I think, to retaining the people that make our district work for our kids. So I really appreciate how you've contextualized all of this with the deficit kind of budget and everything. My question is, if we were able, or if you could talk through your vision for, like, if we were to approve this tonight, I worry about, I would like to see it contextualized as step one in an assured slow rollout of pay equity, because in the past year, we've declined to give raises to specific groups because of the lack of pay equity, but based on some questions that you were kind enough to answer, so I want to give the public kind of an opportunity to hear your thought process with kind of our bones for how we can address longevity pay. Could you kind of talk us through how this could be step one and what the time range would be to additionally address longevity pay for teachers, administrators, coaches, and our extracurricular staff who, like, kind of side note, we just had some great presentations last night from high school teachers that, you know, had provided, like, these amazing opportunities for students and all these grant dollars. I mean, I don't want to leave them out of the conversation either. So could you kind of talk us through your vision and kind of what you see over the next year or two and how that fits in with what you've presented here this evening?
Sure, and thank you for that opportunity. And my vision, it really started when I took this position last year, and unfortunately a lot of things have transpired since then. But I started talking about this budget committee work group and having community involvement as early as last August, saying this is really what is driving me. And making budget decisions, in my mind, in a vacuum, which I hate to say that, but that's really what COVID has created. And unfortunately, last year with all transitions that we had going on, that's what happened again. I don't want to be the holder and keeper of all this knowledge and making decisions about what our priorities are. I think as a district, we need to take those collectively, and we need to look at our families. You know, when you start looking at declining enrollment, we've got to find out why they're leaving, where they're going to, and we know we offer these opportunities. How do we maximize those? And when we start looking at those directly impact our funding. And so one of the things that I am really appreciative of is the ability to work very closely now with our student services, with our teaching and learning teams, and finding out what those needs are. I wish I could give you an exact timeline of everything. Unfortunately, it's going to be very fluid because we have a very exciting, whether you want to say it's exciting or not, but we have a major national election coming up. We have many things that are going to drive change in this environment. There are a lot of unknowns. As I indicated earlier, my plan is to put this to bed tonight and start on that 2021, or 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24 in that model and get people involved. I don't want the budget to be an empty room. I want people to enjoy this numbers, geeky things that I like to enjoy. I want to explain it. I want to make them excited about it and feel like they have a voice. If I come up here and say, hey, I want to give administrators a 5% raise, I need to justify, and I want the community to say, yes, they're worth it, or no, they're not. This is our priority. If you remember a couple of years ago, we made playgrounds at intermediate schools a priority. Did we have $250,000 for every school to spend on those playgrounds? No, we made adjustments somewhere else because that was our priority, to get kids out there and get them active. But knowing what is important to Joanne is not necessarily important to everyone on this board. I need input and decisions, and I want this to be a collaborative environment. So when we start talking about pay equity and looking at that goal that the board has set and given to administration, you set that what, and now we're going to do the how. And that my driving force is to get this committee up and running, give reports to the board, let them know what this committee is working on. I don't want to be in isolation, and I want to get that feedback. So I know there's lots of times we don't want to stand up here and give these talks because we're timid or we're scared. We don't know what the questions are going to be. I have always said I welcome those challenges because I want the opportunity to understand all the components so I can address them. I don't want to be standing here with a deer in the headlights and answer questions out of left field, but I welcome those challenging questions that we can get down to what is important. And so without being able to tell you what's going to happen in the nation and how we're going to move forward, I can give you my best commitment. For 5 years, this is what has been my driving force. It will continue to be my driving force. And if I was not committed to that, I do not think that I would be here standing here asking you to spend more in a deficit budget, because that's not a popular opinion. But it's something that I feel strongly about, and I will always continue to fight to address the problems that we have in this district and make it a desirable district for our employees and our students.
Okay, so I just want to summarize back. So what I think I heard you say was that we don't have necessarily a timeline for pay equity because it's based on the budget kind of group that you want to put together, as well as unanticipated potential changes in funding at the federal level?
Yes, but I am committed to that work, and that work will start this year. I can't give you a finish date, but that work will begin as soon as this budget is finished, so we can start focusing on the next year.
So my follow-up question, so that's very helpful. So my follow-up question to that then would be, what would have to happen conservatively this year in our planning for the 21-22 school year to move that longevity piece forward then for like para support staff teachers and administrators, like potentially in the following year budget, because it would really help. Obviously, I really want to support this because, like you said, this is a highly neglected group, and it's logical if we have to do it piecemeal, which makes sense. And then, like you described, the uncertainty of the budget situation, like let's do kind of one domino at a time. It'll help me if I have a sense of we're working toward the next domino and sort of not just, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't want to like pin you down to a date because I know that there are a lot of unknowns, but I guess you talked a little bit about priorities, and I think that this is something that if we're going to take action tonight, I think that's signaling, or it should signal to the district that we're taking pay equity seriously and that it is a top priority. And so if we're that's my interpretation of what a yay vote would be for this. So I guess if you could help me maybe understand a little better, and maybe whoever's listening understand a little better, what factors currently exist that would help. What do I want to say here? Like that will help us kind of like be certain that we're going to see the next degree of longevity pay and pay equity maybe in our next year's budget.
So I want to jump in, and this sounds like it's a continuation of like the budget for the following school year. And so that's something I think it's a great discussion to continue like in planning and budget, but then focusing on this year.
And that's fair. I guess like this is a great thing. I'm concerned that again we're like singling out a group over like everyone. And I guess so maybe my question would be then for this year, I guess maybe I need to think this through a little bit better, because I guess like I guess I had the understanding previously that if we were going to move forward with like a piecemeal pay equity, that there was like a plan. So like, and it sounds like you had kind of a bare bones plan where there were like kind of projected numbers and things like that. I mean, could you maybe just speak to that a little bit more? And I mean, I guess like all things being equal based on the assumptions that we're making this year, I mean, I guess is there 2021 budget space to do whatever it is necessary to make room for this, like as soon as possible? Because I guess I'm just sort of uncomfortable supporting one group without acknowledging, I mean, everybody is working like in above and beyond ridiculous conditions right now because of COVID to do what's best for the kids in this community. And I don't want to shirk off like what is the amazing work that's being done with our secretarial staff at all. But we have teachers, we have paras who also like, there was a recruitment increase last year, but no retention increase. So you know, maybe like the how that you talked about a moment ago for like the short-term goal that we set, like this is something that's in progress, I guess is kind of what I'm looking for.
Well, I want to clarify that when they did the adjustment last year to paras, any para that was under that starting base wage was brought up to that wage, which resulted in some, over $2.50 raises for some people, and they do continue to get that CPI. There was nobody that did not get an increase last year in that group. So just to clarify that, I hear what you're saying. I'm very conflicted in continuing to present even further deficits in just one, for addressing a single group. Again, as far as the longevity that was presented and looked at was just for the professional educators. And you have a tremendous group of other people, because not just secretarial support, you have the instructional support, you have administrators, you have coaching. We have quite a large task to look at pay equity. And look, I am not saying that we would not be able to address longevity in the 21-22 school year. it is identifying what those priorities are. When I start talking with community and staff and getting this work group together, we may find that there's an alternative to longevity that will increase every year because more people are added to it, because our goal is to not lose staff. So, the cost of longevity will continue to increase each year. Maybe there are some other alternatives. So I guess that's where I'm hesitant to say, yes, I will say there's going to be longevity addressed 100% in 21-22. I'm saying that this work group committee will look and identify how we have got to be creative in our funding as we continue to see this declining enrollment and the state and the federal aids going down and those things. We've got to be creative, and we've got to find ways to retain and recruit people to our district. Retention is one of our largest problems in this district. And sometimes just longevity, I'm not positive is 100% the answer for it. I think there are other ways that we need to look at the entire package. We need to look at everyone's compensation, look at that equity. And I guess that's where I'm struggling with making that commitment to you, that I would have longevity addressed in 21-22, but I am confident to say that we will have plans developed and we will be providing reports on how we're going to look at pay equity and how that transitions to our recruitment and retention of all staff.
Okay, I appreciate that. And this is a very complex, nuanced situation. And so I don't want to nail you down on anything, but it helps to know that I'm really excited about the opportunity to support this group of employees. I'm very uncomfortable, however, without, that I still feel like I've made my point. So what I do really appreciate about what you just said is thank you for highlighting how complex this is. I will point out that longevity pay was something that the VEA asked for last year, I think back in May or earlier. It was the 18-19 school year. So, I do want to make sure that that's in the conversation, but creativity is awesome. And I guess just final thoughts, I appreciate that when we're doing kind of these budget groups, that the concept of pay equity is a top priority. And I think that helps because it's not a cut and dry issue. And I'm sorry, I hope I'm not trying to put you on the spot, and you're doing a really nice job explaining kind of the complexity and what your thought process is. So I really do appreciate that. So thank you.
Board Member Jacobs.
So I'm going to put one more plug in for this group, but before I do that, I have to be honest. I was micromanaging in my little mind. I was thinking of all different ways that we could get creative, Joanne, with putting more money into the fund balance, but that's not my job. So my job is to address what we are looking at, and I just cannot strongly say enough. 9 years, I understand, and I'm financially conservative as well, but 9 years is a very long time. And as an administrator, I saw the impact every single day that these people had on the schools and how they impacted student achievement. And it's a morale issue. Indeed, it is. But if we want to keep kids in our district and we want to get kids back, we have got to have people that know that we are behind them, that we understand what a great job they're doing, that they're doing a difficult job. And this is one way, this is a very important way that we can do that. And we all want our kids to come back. And I think this is a step in doing it. Thanks.
All right, Board Member Levy.
Thank you. So while acknowledging the complexities of this issue, I just want to take a step back and kind of look at big picture. And we have talked about it would be great to resolve pay equity for everyone at once. I think we can all agree to that. Under the constraints that we find ourselves, we're doing this piecemeal. is it a safe categorization of the situation to kind of categorize other groups that we have discussed as seeking competitive wages, but when we're talking about the group that's up for discussion currently, is that more of a livable wage discussion versus competitive wage? Because while I want to be fair and equitable to everyone, I think it's a slightly different conversation when we're talking about competitive wages and when we're talking about livable wages, especially with the uncertainties that we find ourselves in. If there is a way for us, without great harm financially to the district, even though we're presenting a deficit budget, to highlight the fact that this could assist with livable wages and competitive wages, while very important, that's separate. Is that an appropriate context to view this discussion in?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. My question is more kind of on the verbiage of the motion that you need. We don't make these motions very often, and I want to make sure that we have everything legally contained in it that we do, so that we need to make sure that it's crystal clear. So the motion would add this to the budget that the board will then vote on. So what do you need that motion to look like?
I would be looking for, because we want to keep the motions separate so that Board Member Anderson can come in to vote on the full budget. What I would be requesting is that the board, as seated now, would make a motion to approve the recommendation of a $2 per hour increase for secretarial and support employee group.
Can you repeat the groups again for me, please?
Secretarial and support.
Okay. All right, and then you don't need any verbiage in there being attached to the budget or the additional deficit that'd be paid out of fund balance?
No, because when we vote on the budget, we will make the motion to approve the budget as presented with the addition of the increase previously approved, hopefully, of the $2 increase to come from fund balance.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Board Member Wong?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend a $2 increase in pay for the secretarial and support group within the district.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation of a $2 per hour increase for secretarial and support staff. Are there any other questions or discussion regarding this motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. So the $2 per hour increase for secretarial and support staff will be added to the budget.
Thank you on behalf of that entire employee group.
All right, we're going to wait just 1 second for Board Member Anderson to join us again before we continue. I feel like we need to have like music or something to play in the meantime.
Mr. President,
Yes, Board Member Jacobs.
I was a vocal minor. I could sing if you'd like.
Oh, look, Board Member Anderson just returned. Let's continue. No. Okay. So is there a motion to, for the budget? Or any other questions or discussion?
I got it. Board President Larson, I'd like to move approval of the Board of Education to approve the 2020 to 2021 budget and total tax levy of $17,522,775, which consists of an operating levy of $4,257,062, non-referendum debt levy of $965,713, and a referendum debt levy of $12,300,000.
And that's good. We don't have to mention it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Oh, are you gonna make me read all that again? Oh boy, I know. Hang on, it is a lot of numbers. And I used to teach kindergarten for a reason, people.
It's numeracy.
Mm-hmm.
Point of order, who seconded?
I did.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
You are so welcome, Michelle.
Okay, give me just 1 second to get back to the motion. I'm sorry. Okay, so we have a motion, a second, to approve the 2020-2021 budget and total tax levy of $17,522,775, which consists of an operating tax levy of $4,257,062, non-referendum debt levy of $965,713, and a referendum debt levy of $12,300,000. Any further questions or discussion regarding the motion?
I just have a question. Does that include the pay increases that we just supported, or is that separate from?
Sorry. The levy numbers are contingent on our revenue side. You are correct in what we are adopting for the levy. You could add this statement if you want that you are approving the budget with that increase previously approved, because that isn't reflective in your levy. Does that make sense?
Do we need the estimated number? Like, is it to not exceed?
Your levy won't change. Your levy is that. So the only item that would change is based on the approval of those increases. That was the total. I've got my number here. Sorry.
Do you need the number, or can you just say as approved?
Yep. Yeah. You can just say per the $2 increase previously approved.
So should we vote this one down and then make a new motion and add that in there? Okay. So is there an amendment to include that language?
So, okay, so I'm going to be that person tonight. Could we get that close to $300,000 estimate, just because we've been very technical about all of our other numbers, just to say to not exceed, and use that upper limit of the estimate that you had for the secretarial and support pay group increases?
Okay. Just to be clarified, the reason that you have to be specific on those levy amounts is that is what is certified to the city clerks for the tax bills. So when you are looking at the approval of the budget, that is done in one motion with the tax levy. So we can definitely use that number of 314. I would say approximately $315,000 is what that estimated cost with benefits is, that $2 increase. But I do not feel that it is necessary in that context of quoting those exact figures, because that is the levy that you're approving.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification. President Larson, I would like to include an amendment to the motion on the floor that we also acknowledge the $2 increase for secretarial and support employee groups to not exceed the $315,000.
Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to include that $2 raise with a do not exceed of $315,000 to the budget. Is there any other questions regarding that amendment? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Abstain.
Okay, so the amendment passes. So now the motion is the Board of Education approves the 2020-2021 budget, including the $2 pay increase for secretarial and support staff, not to exceed $315,000, and total tax levy of $17,522,775, which consists of an operating tax levy of $4,257,062, non-referendum debt levy of $965,713, and a referendum debt levy of $12,300,000. Okay, any other questions or discussion regarding the main motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, the budget is approved. Hurrah! All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We have taken care of all of the business for the budget hearing. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to adjourn the meeting, but stay tuned because we have just one little smidgy thing to take care of after this. Okay, any other questions or discussion regarding the adjournment? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned. Okay. Board Secretary, you ready? Okay. I'm going to call the special board meeting to order. May I have roll call, please?
Anderson,
Here.
Delgado,
Here.
Jacobs,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Levy,
Here.
Miller,
Present.
Wong.
Here.
I have everyone present with Anderson, Larson, and Wong in the boardroom. All others are virtual.
All right. May I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, a second to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion regarding the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. The first item is the professional development, erasing the poverty achievement gap.
Joe's not on the line, but this was actually approved through committee and would have been part of the consent agenda. Do you want me to give a brief overview?
Nope.
Okay.
It's there. Are there any questions for Dr. Keyser regarding this? Okay. And this was omitted last night, but it was important for Aldrich that they are able to continue this work and not wait for 2 more weeks. Is there a motion?
President Larson, I'll move approval of the purchase of 8 3.5-hour individual scaffold professional development trainings delivered by Kathleen Burge, the author of Disrupting Poverty, 5 Powerful Classroom Practices at the cost of $6,000 a training session, a total of $48,000.
Is there a second?
My second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. To approve the purchase of 8 3 and 1.5-hour individual scaffolded professional development trainings delivered by Kathleen Budge, the author of Disrupting Poverty, 5 Powerful Classroom Practices at the cost of $6,000 per training session, $48,000 in total. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, I'm going to be that person. I'm really excited about this because this book and this author, like, they're phenomenal in this area of work, and I'm so excited that this is happening in Beloit. So okay, now any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much. So we have concluded all of the business of this meeting. Is there any other questions or discussion that we missed? Or are we ready to adjourn? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, a second. Did somebody second?
Second.
I did it.
Okay.
Sorry. Or
Okay.
whatever. Thank
We have a motion second to adjourn. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.